in general. Just Enhanced Shaman comps have that really high potential to just catch people off guard in the opener, and I like that they kind of opted in to hold onto those Doom ones until just now, trying to get that extra pressure onto Poon. So that's something that they've been doing a lot with their Windwalker, or sorry, with their Enhanced Shaman comps, kind of staggering those cooldowns. But they get a really big bolt onto Goonbag right here, and they're going to force that wall on him, and he still has that Curse of Exhaustion on him, or not Curse of Exhaustion, I think it's the HP one. Don't remember the exact name. I mean, that's going to... Exactly. Yeah, for Chiller. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, once you have that and you get a big bolt in the Fellfisher, that starts to become worrisome for your healer to top you off, especially a Mistweaver that has no way of the Crane available.
Yeah, no, you definitely need the burst healing in those situations, and that's one of the scary things about this Deathstroke Windwalker. It's like they cut your health by 20% and then they destroy you.
Ooh, big Touch of Death comes out.
We see Touch of Death right now. Actually, it's interesting. Goon's playing the Counter Strike totem, so he's got that counter pressure. But we see a lot of damage onto Poon. Hand of Sacrifice with the human racial from Unix. Acts appropriately, but it was quite late, quite scary. He trusts his healer and he stays alive. But I mean, let's have a little look at the overall of the game, because Goon really doesn't have that many cooldowns left. Not Vinx is porting away, using his way of the Crane. He does have his Trinket, but this next go could be really scary on the side of Non-Handsome Man.
Yeah, they're actually doing a lot more damage than I thought they would have. I mean, they've been forcing out so many cooldowns back to back to back. I mean, this just shows so much confidence from Unitas here. I would have not expected them to play this into a Warrior team at all. I absolutely would have not put them.
We also didn't expect him to jungle, for what it's worth.
yeah, exactly. I didn't think that. I mean, honestly, they seem to be really comfortable with this pick, and I mean, it's doing great for them. They get a great double cooler right here, getting a lot of offensive pressure right now. But here's the Doom Winds go onto Poon right now. They're not going to use that lust with it. They're trying to get that really strong offensive pressure onto him. But now a defensive leg sweep comes out from Primes, and now they're going to turn that into counter pressure here, forcing that wall. They use a defensive fear from Boy Franklin, just trying to peel all this damage. But man, it's just so quick reaction time, I feel like, from Unitas, just to be able to react to any of these turbos goes. They always seem to be ready for any of these kill windows, and always are just rotating something at the right time.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the Unitas Black team we saw coming out of Latin America at BlizzCon. Like, they were just very solid team. Of course, they had Rind on that one, and he's one of the best druids. But Unix is also showing his stuff in this one. He always has the right answer when it comes to these offensive pushes. We see now Vinx pushing in. He wants the incap into the stun. Here comes the Bloodlust. Here comes the damage. Poon uses his first trinket out of the stun. DR stun not achieving too much, though. No Hand of Sacrifice even traded out there. So that's a really good situation for Unitas to be in. They use one Blessing of Protection here. They're trying to get aggressive with that fear onto Vinx into the full Repentance, but once again, Goon's out of there. Ports away, kites away, using everything. Still dropping low, though. The Execute, he's dropping so low. We see the human racial from Vinx. He's trying to reconnect. DR Fear coming out.
There's a touch of that now, too.
Now they have to turn the pressure, maybe. But they did force the Life Cocoon. Looks like Goon will survive for now, though.
Yeah, they're just forcing so many cooldowns, but now Poon's in so much trouble. I mean, there's that incap right there. Is he going to be greedy? I think he's going to sit in that. He's just going to be able to rotate one cooldown and just be able to keep Poon alive here. But I really just like how quickly they're reacting to every Bloodlust. It feels like that cooldown is pretty much negated every single time. Like, the second he uses it, instantly we see coils coming out, and I like that he's kind of holding his coils not in a greedy way for himself, but he's more using them defensively and then just going offensive at that window. And I think that's the best way you can play a Destruction Warlock, is kind of use your opponent's go as the opportunity to appeal for yourself and then set up for yourself at the same time. I think that's one of the things that's making this comp work so well for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's really doing a great job. In both these teams, honestly, I think they understand like how they can win and lose the game, right? I think Vinx, to his credit, like when he doesn't have that way of the Crane, he's really porting back, he's playing defensive, and now you can see that his team's getting aggressive. He ports in again, gets that crowd control, sets up the capstone on Unix. Now Goon, though, dropping so low, has to use the Astral Shift, kiting away, and honestly, that's not how you want a Bloodlust attempt to go. You don't want to have to be porting behind the pillar. Still fears on Vinx, still crowd control. As we see Poon in the middle of the map, even putting some Chaos Bolts onto him, just trying to get as much pressure as possible. But it probably won't be enough since Fortified Brew is up, and now we see Way of the Crane to stabilize. But again,
He died!
I can't believe it! He had such a death, and he was at the final second of the stun. But Vinx, Goon, and
I don't think they expected that to happen. I think they thought he was going to be okay.
Yeah, I thought he would be okay too. It was like DR stun for like 40% to It wasn't even Bloodlust, man. It wasn't even Bloodlust.
It was Doom Winds though and Battle Cry. I honestly think that Bloodlust sometimes gets used as a bait, especially from the Shaman. They use the Bloodlust to kind of get you to think you're okay, right? You just, you see the Bloodlust, oh, okay, we're fine. And then Doom Winds and the battle cry together, those can actually be super scary bursts, especially combined with where you're getting sharpened blade. If the enhanced shaman just gets enough procs and he's just spamming that damage with Doom Winds up, you can die so fast. Like it's unreal. I mean, we saw how quickly he died, and it caught them entirely off guard, and that's one of the ways that Turbo can win games. But I mean, definitely not on the target that anyone thought it was going to be. No one really expects a Windwalker monk to die, right? Like that's always the most interesting thing.
It's one of those situations where you come out of the game and someone on the team, there's probably a bit of silence, everyone's a little bit annoyed, and someone says, feels bad, man. Because it was such a close moment. I mean, you can't blame Primes for pushing in there. He had Goon so low, he was pushing in, trying to force that final wave of the crane, which he did force. He forced that cooldown out of it. But, I mean, he got caught off guard, didn't have the trinket. I mean, it's always a risky run when you run that melee DPS if you do get caught out guard by that. But I mean, hey, end of the day, the result is what matters, right? And Grunks will be looking on to see potentially their rematch here against whoever they do play against, or whoever does win this series. And Unhandsome Men are the one that take the first game on their grand arena. And Dilly, we've been talking about it a little bit. We always do how important it is to win that blind pick on the ground.
Yeah. And in any of these matchups where teams have multiple comps and you have the potential to counterpick your opponent, or even maybe you just have better maps that you want to pick, you need to win that first game, because if it ever comes down to that best of 5 game, that first win, that's the most important. You really need that. So them taking that first win is really important for them. Honestly, I actually think that situation with the Windwalker, that's the funniest thing that I always see happen.
I always get a tiny little bit of pleasure when I see someone get blown up like that. It's one of the more entertaining things to watch, right?
Right, because with Windwalker,
feels bad as a player.
Well, yeah, you'll just have those situations, right, where the entire game, you're never focused at all. No one wants to go on you because, if you're actually being conscious of it as a Windwalker, you're not going to die, and no one tries to set up on you at all. The game goes on 5-10 minutes or whatever, and then they're just like, okay, let's just watch the Windwalker. And he just dies because the entire game, like,
you have to have the vision to do that, right? Like, that's an in-game adaptation. It's
exactly.
Like, we were talking about it as well, like when they were playing Enhanced Windwalker earlier in the tournament. Sometimes it's like you have to be unpredictable, but you have to be unpredictable to that point where you are recognizing opportunities to win the game, not opportunities to force another cooldown, which you're never going to go back to. So this was an opportunity where Primes had the touch of karma. So if he gets that touch of karma off, they're probably not going to go back to him, and it's just going to be a waste of time. But they see he doesn't have the trinket, they spot the opportunity with the Doom Winds, like you said, Dill, and they pull it off. And now they're the ones who get the benefits, right? They're 1-0 up in this series. They're going to the map choice of Poon, which of course is going to be a bigger map for that caster to be a little bit more devastating, but they're going to have the smaller maps in their utility. And since they're a very heavy cleave team, it's going to help them a lot. And I mean, there's no reason why they can't win it out until Vron as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's how I just keep feeling they're going to be in this situation where it's going to be a close series. I think that last game was really looking good for Unitas. They definitely respected the cooldowns the entire game. I mean, they definitely got killed off of a Gib, but that's also, in a way, that's something that a Destrolock can do too. So it's kind of like both teams are trying to avoid each other's setups, but at the same time, they also just have the ability to kind of just kill someone in a very unexpected way. You just go for your setup the entire game and then just decide it's not working, you swap to this guy and catch someone off guard from it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very clean executed swap. He's going for opportunity. Let's see if they can do it again in game 2, because of course Goon and we have Boy Franklin playing on that warrior. They're the two people that have been trying to push in. I actually realized that Goon and Poon rhyme, but that's completely unrelated to the game. Of course, Goon definitely doesn't want any friendliness with Poon in this game. He wants to just tunnel him down, and we can see Poon just has to stand there and tank the damage, because that's what a Destro Warlock is. You don't have your portal, you have to play with your coils, so he's just going to stand there in the middle of the map and get out as much damage as possible, which is, of course, very difficult when being tunneled down by the Turbo Cleave.
Oh, and one thing to point out that Binks actually made a talent swap this game. He was actually playing that Ring of Peace, and I don't know if we saw it in the opener, but because Poon has been playing that casting circle, I think he's using the Ring of Peace during the casting circles, and he knocks him out of it right there. He just did it at this moment, and this actually completely negates that cooldown. So I actually really like the creativity coming out from Binks there. Now they get incap though, and a double leg sweep goes out onto them. A lot of pressure goes out onto Goonbag right now. They're trying to get some offensive pressure with that, with that Storm Earth and Fire effect onto Goonbag, but not going to really get that kill there. But still, the amount of pressure that they just are able to turn with that, I think is really interesting.
It's another annoying interrupt for Poon to deal with. I really like that adaptation from Vinx. It's a good spot by you.
Yeah.
But Goon, one of the things that Goon's really been doing a great job of as well, I think, is recognizing these situations where Vinx, and for what it's worth, Vinx actually completely changes stance. It's not even running Way of the Crane on this small map, so on this large map rather. He doesn't feel confident pushing in, getting that damage, and then pointing back to the pillar. He just thinks that Poon's can sit in the corner of the map as he's doing, and he wouldn't be able to do that. But it means that every time he does drop low, there's going to be opportunities for them to get the kill on Goon. He can play with counter spells now, just completely change the meta game for Poon. And Poon's definitely been doing a good job thus far. He has a lot of pressure going.
Yeah, and instead of playing the Ancient Mystery or Arts as well, it's probably important to know he's actually playing the Surge of Mist, so that is going to just be the most mana efficient spec he can play next to Way of the Crane. So it makes him have the long game, but also doesn't have to push in there. And I think that's a good choice. He just, like you said, he wants to sit back and play that way. And it's a really good playstyle choice from them. And they're getting a lot more pressure onto Poon that's being disruptive. It doesn't look like that first game did, where all their setup windows were kind of shut down. And I think that Unitas is feeling a little bit more pressure this game.
Yeah, for sure. And you see Primes with his beautiful, essentially, I mean, he's basically topless. He's wearing like a leather vest or something on that transmog. He's pushing in, but he's doing way more damage than his gear suggests. Gets the incap now over onto Notvinx, trying to set up damage onto Goon. Poon also trades out his Unending Resolve. He wants to get aggressive here with that Aura Mastery, but once again, we see a beautiful Ringer piece coming out from Vinx, denying the crowd control. We see coils coming out, but there's no cover, so the dispel into the warrior results in the pummel and the chaos bolt. Again, Unhandsome men are just on point with this defensive gameplay, and they will win the mana game, especially since Vinx is running that very efficient specialization.
Yeah, I really like how much respect they're giving to the casting circle and the chaos bolts. They're playing, like we said, Ring of Peace for the casting circles, and he's also playing the Hex Totem, the Voodoo Totem from Goonbag. So if the Warlock has an Aura Mastery up, okay, you get Voodoo Totem. Or if they just want to stop the cast, they can use that. And this just gives more and more interrupts to him on top of the Shear, on top of, you know, the Warrior's pummel. And that makes it really scary for the Warlock, especially because he's just getting trained by these melee the entire game. I just like that they've adapted very, very cleanly this entire series.
Yeah, and I mean, you can see the dividends of that. It's basically on the blue bar of the healers, right? You got Notvinx sitting at about 90%, whereas Unix is at about 40%, and he will not be able to keep this up. Dampening, of course, we're a couple of minutes away. We see Vinx pushing up, gets caught up, but of course uses his human racial, trying to get some crowd control into Unix now as they do pressure down Poon. Ring of Peace, though, isn't enough actually to deny that Chaos Bolt, so Goon has to use his Astral Shift to mitigate some of that damage. We see Repentance coming out into Vinx as well, so perhaps a slight miscalculation by him. He doesn't actually need to play this aggressive. He can just sit by the pillar and play the long game. Like we were saying, Unix will run out of mana first, especially on this bigger map.
Yeah, exactly. With this map, I think that's what their game plan should be. Don't let the lock get bolts off. Do damage on him until the Paladin goes The Mistweaver has enough mobility and the specialization to just be able to live without going and they will just win the game smoothly. I think the way it's going, as long as they just avoid getting gibbed, this is honestly their map to win. I don't see them losing. They've made the right choices. And Goon, I like that he's just kind of deciding to run a little bit more. I think that's what he could do. If he wanted, he could just spend most of the game running. And now they're going for a let's go onto Poon, trying to get a lot of damage during that incap onto Unix. They use the wall from Poon, and he's just trying his best to survive right now. He uses the double coil onto Goonbag and Boy Franklin, and they follow that up with a leg sweep into a Fist of Fury, and just getting a lot of pressure onto both of these melee DPS, trying to peel this setup here. And that was the Dark Soul 2 being used from Poonexo. But now they have a little bit of a small incap going on Vinx. I don't think they're going to be able to make any swaps to him, though. They have to put this pressure onto the Enhancement Shaman, it looks like, because it doesn't seem like the worst going to be a kill target. But a Stormbolt goes down to Poon, trinkets it. There's the bot from Unix. He's really, really falling behind here. He only has one more bot, and he does have 2 sacks left, but still no wings. It's going to make it very hard to heal, and that big Chaos Bolt came out right there. But Poon, getting chunked very, very, very low, has to use a sack from Unix, so he does have another sack left, but still, both teams just back and forth with that very strong burst from one another.
This is a game all about Poon and Goon at this point. It's a PG show, but what's happening to Poon and Goon is definitely not PG. They are getting absolutely destroyed by both of them. They're really trying to slay each other at this point. And I mean, honestly, it's been going both ways, right? But the mana bar definitely not in favor of Unix. He's down to about 10%. He can't keep this going much longer. He doesn't have any mana in the tank to keep his team alive. We see the pummel as the warrior swapping over. Here comes the Bloodlust. They're trying to get pressure. Divine Shield and Hand of Sacrifice are available. Wouldn't be surprised to see those coming out momentarily. So we see the counter pressure, though. A Fear somehow snuck in onto Vinx. He's in a bit of trouble. Pushes up, once again getting punished for it. Poon with the Hand of Sacrifice now, should be able to get stabilized just a little bit by Unix. But Goon, once again there, he had to trade out the Astral Shift because of an overextension by Vinx. I think he needs to be careful here. If Vinx does keep overextending like this, he could set up an opportunity for Unitas, but they just don't need that. They just need to sit back. Unix is now. He's looking for a drink at this moment in time. If he can get that, it's going to be huge. But Poon is so low on health, they just can't avoid it. Blessing Protection comes out, but it will be purged most likely.
So
we see
they use the
from
wings.
Unix.
They use the trinket and wings, but yeah, like you said, I think all Vinx needs to do is just crackling Jade Unix. That's it. He just needs to sit back, max range, and just stop him from drinking. Do that, and they've got this game won. But this is the burst winner that kills them. They broke the cocoon instantly with the Warlock burst right there, and they still have Touch of Death coming up in a couple seconds. So now there's a kill opportunity, but Unitas has to win now. And they get the Hexdome on that wall from Poon. They catch him in the full Stormbolt. He's gonna sit that. He has the wall up. He's trying to do what he can to survive, but Unix has nothing left, and he's gonna go down. That's it. I mean, they have that Bloodlust coming out there.
Game 2 in favor of the Unhandsome men, and I mean, it was a good game from both the sides, right? We saw opportunities for good. I think the huge credit you have to give to the Unhandsome men there is Vinx, like you were saying, bring out that Ring of Peace, huge for the casting circle. We also saw him running a more efficient spec and a less aggressive one, where he doesn't have the way of the crane, so he's just healing basically at the back of the pillar, and it was enough for them to win on this bigger map. It was the map choice actually from Unitas, but it was beautifully countered by Unhandsome men, and now they're 2-0 up in the series. They're one game away from the grand finals, getting that top 2, and that would be huge for this team, because let's not forget, they were the number 4 seed coming into it, but they weren't one of the big 3 that we were talking about. Yeah. They can pick up this top 2. It's going to be huge for them. And I mean, then you have to think about, Mad Dog, Gronks, and Unitas. Those are the 3 you'd expect to qualify based on just the seeding and like who are the most known players coming out of this region. So they're Unhandsome men are basically there to lodge a big ranch in the middle of that one and say, hey, we're here to stay and we want to qualify for that APAC finals. So it's going to be a hell of a battle over the next 4 cups, but we've also got a battle here today. And I mean, Gronk's looking in the upper bracket. They're probably not too confident seeing these adaptations coming out very quickly from the Unhandsome men as well.
Yeah, exactly. They've been doing a fantastic job this whole time. I like that they both were just super coordinated on shutting down the Destro lock by having not just Vinx with the Ring of Peace, but with also the Surging Mist on that map and with the Hex Totem from Goonbag, because I think the last game he was playing Capacitor Totem, I believe. So they were using Cap Totems.
I mean, they're changing all kinds of things, right? They basically just adapted perfectly to playing around Poon. But that was actually the great thing. Even though they made all these changes, Poon somehow, some way, was still able to get clean setups. He got a few fears. I think he snuck them out. I'm not entirely sure how over onto Vinx. He was able to get a fair few chaos sports out as well. And I mean, it was a really close game. Could have gone either way. But ultimately, like, the score is 2-0. It's going to be really hard to reverse sweep this with this Turbo Cleave playing so well.
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe they're going to swap out of the Destro lock. I think that game is how I expected a Turbo to win versus a Destro lock. The first game, it looked a lot scarier for them, I think. And maybe that just came down to their talent choices, right? Because with the ones they had this game, I don't see that going really any differently on any other map, right? Like, it looked like a struggle for the Destro lock to really finish them off. I mean, they had so many close windows and they had great setups from primes, but it just doesn't have that finishing power, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's something we saw where, I mean, it really does kind of rely on mistakes, I think, at some point, like, or at least like some little outplays here and there. You have to get those perfectly clean setup with the coil, the incap, potentially the fear coming out as well. It's very difficult for the Warlock Poons, but he's the man you want to do it, right? Like, him and Chanimal's definitely 2 of the strongest Warlocks in this region. And I think it's very cool, but it's important that we mention like how the format's working as well. So, of course, we talk a little bit about how the top 3 teams will be qualifying to that Asia Pacific LAN. There's 4 cups actually in the ANZ regions, that's Australia, New Zealand, essentially. And the 4 cups are decided by points, similar to North America and Europe. The top 4 teams on those points, the top 3 teams rather, will be qualifying in. Of course, that's where they meet the rest of Asia Pacific. They meet the teams from Korea, teams from Taiwan. I believe it's 3 from Korea and 2 from Taiwan. So that'll be an 8-team regional live event. Played out in September, and the one winner of that goes to BlizzCon. So all these teams, their ultimate goal is to make it there. And I mean, one of the teams you've got who are playing for their tournament lives at this moment in time did make it to BlizzCon last year, right? You got Primes and these guys, Primes, Unix, and Streaming. All 3 of those were at BlizzCon representing Asia Pacific and ANZ last time around. And if they don't win this one, it's going to be a rough start for them. But of course, top 3, all these teams is where they want to be. It looks like we should be looking to get into the game momentarily. Dalaran Sewers is actually going to be the next map. So 2-0 in favor of Unhandsome Men, which is completely changing up the strategy. And honestly, if we see Dalaran Sewers coming out, it's a small map. You're thinking maybe Poon's actually going to be put on the bench once again. They're going to bring out streaming on that Death Knight. That could be an interesting swap, though.
Oh, we got the confirmation though that they're going to be playing the same comps. I'm curious.
Yep, never mind. I was going to say, I really like watching them play Windwalker Death Knight. Yeah, I love watching these guys play it, but it looks like we're going to stick with Poon. And I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, they have been doing pretty well with him as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you never know. Maybe they're just playing the long game, right? You just want to get more practice with this comp, more experience playing this, and feel it out for the future cups, right? I feel like in the first cup, I feel like that's always okay to do for any team, that you can kind of just play something and know that you're going to end up swapping it up later on, or just improving that comp, right? Just trying to test the waters a bit. I mean, they've already gone top 3, right? So
yeah, no, it's a very good point. I mean, of course, we talk about Unix Prime streaming, like they did at BlizzCon last year, but they had Rooks as their Mistweaver monk, who they've swapped in now for Poon, since of course it didn't really make too much sense to have the Mistweaver, since Unix was doing the majority of the healing anyways. So yeah. I definitely agree with you. Like, integrating Poon, giving him some tournament experience, especially having already made it to top 3, makes sense. And I don't think Poon's playing bad. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just, I wonder composition-wise whether the Death Knight would be good, but at the same time, Death Knight into Turbo is going to get absolutely destroyed as well. So, I mean, I can definitely understand why they wouldn't want to bring it out.
Yeah, you're right. Honestly, that's something I wasn't really factoring, was DK and Turbo probably just has just as bad.
I just love seeing them play the Windwalker Death Knight, but we are already in the game. This is, of course, potentially the final game. We see the Bloodlust coming out from Goon once again, trying to get aggressive.
See that Ring of Peace too.
The Ring of Peace comes out, and also the Unending Resolve. A lot of defensive cooldowns once again from Unix, but Goon still dropping quite low in this opening exchange.
Yeah, and they're actually... God, that Ring of Peace on that very edge too is also a little bit more obnoxious, because they're getting knocked off from it too. So that's a little bit of extra disruption that makes things harder for them. And honestly, they're going to be able to line of sight a little bit better on this map if Goonbag wants to run away from those bolts. But at the same time, Primes is going to have a good time getting some damage out onto them. And he's been the one that's really been working hard on setting up those kills when he gets those strong touch of deaths out. Though those are what's been hard for Binks to deal with, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it really has been. The touch of death is definitely a scary thing. I mean, Primes is a scary person to play against in general, but especially like when you see that, and we see touch of death now committing over onto Goon, who does not have his Astral Shift. He gets caught into the DL stun. Are they going to get the life cocoon? Barely in time. It actually almost got destroyed, eaten through by that touch of death. Still a little bit of trouble. If they can get follow-up crowd control into Vinx, could be it. Of course, he's not playing that way of the Crane, which means he doesn't have that huge burst healing cooldown. It looks like he's going to be able to keep Goon alive for now. And of course, that was a fair few cooldowns, but they are able to stabilize with Vinx not using his trinket. So big opportunity for them later in the game. Poon now, of course, is going to be taking the brunt of this turbo cleave damage, but he's doing a really good job positioning himself in an awkward place for the turbo to follow.
I really like the way they were getting these CCs though onto Vinx. Like they're actually doing a good job getting any CC chains onto him to open up these scary opportunities like this, and I think that's really difficult for them to do in general. So them finding those opportunities against this turbo to do that, it's smart play by them. Now they go for a double X. They should be able to get off a bullet here, trying to get a lot of damage onto Goon. They are going to put down that Ring of Peace though, stop that Warlock from getting any extra damage here, and that was the Dark Soul being used from Poon there, so that is going to stop a little bit of that damage. Just not really being able to do too much of that cooldown, and it gets perch off at the very end, so they're not going to really finish anything off with it.
Yeah, and I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying. I think if you're a Destro Warlock at home wondering how do you play against these melee cleaves, definitely watch how this entire team is playing, because they're really setting each other up for success. You see Primes pushing for the in-cap, then stunning the DPS so that Poon can cast the Fear. We see it there once again. And every single time they're forcing cooldowns. They forced Trinket just now they force the Astral Shift from Goon, and now suddenly they're in a great position to try to finish the game. They have Unix's Blessing and Protections if they want to use that offensively. One more setup like that could easily be it if they can just get it cleanly onto Goon. He does have his Trinket though, so he should be able to Trinket share the next one, so they're going to have to take that into consideration. But honestly, Unix and Poon looking great on this map choice so far. poised to potentially bring one back in this series.
There's the ink out though. They're trying to get the setup right here. They go for the double X loop on them. They're trying to peel Puna right now. They do get the trinket being used from Goonbag, trying to just get as much offensive pressure as possible onto Puna right now. They have one sack being used on him, just trying to avoid that damage there just because of how low he got. But they are going to be using the Doomas at the very end of that, trying to get as much pressure as possible on Puna, trying to keep that damage up there. They have a shear going on to Unix, and maybe a little bit of a greedy play going for that shear there. They didn't get too much offensive pressure with that, and now that means that Puna has an opportunity to free cast, and that could make things very scary for them, but he's just getting chunked in these in caps. They force a bop from Unix, and he's going to have to use that wings. I think the bop gets dispelled right there, and that is going to be very, very scary for Unix to deal with. He's just trying to spam heal Puna and keep him alive, and I mean, this game is just not looking to be much in their favor.
Yeah, Unix had to trade out a lot of cooldowns there. I think that was one of his 2 blessing protections, and he also uses both his big healing modifiers, of course, wings being the prominent of the 2. Now he's pushing in. We see the end cap there. Again, this team is really well synergized when it comes to their offensive crowd control. They push in, get the crowd control, but unfortunately, human trinket was available for Vinx. He's able to trade out the life cocoon, and now we see this rotation once again. Vinx should have his PvP trinket up in about 18 seconds. Goon, of course, has that astral shift, and Poon is the one that's taking the brunt of the damage right now. Uses the unending resolve, that shield wall damage reduction, to try and mitigate some of that incoming damage, but it's basically their last defensive cooldown. Hand of Sacrifice, they have 1 left available. I guess they have 1 blessing protection as well, so they do have a few things, but once again, that blue bar on Unix not looking so hot. They really need to get these clean setups and kill Goon soon, otherwise they're going to basically have the rinse and repeat.
There's that ink out though. He has to bubble sack. Yeah, he's forced to bubble sack it. I mean, I think the sack rotation is kind of okay for him. I think I mentioned it earlier that ideally if you can just have 1 sack being used per minute, that's good. Like, you don't want to use them both at the same time. You want to just be able to avoid doing them that frequently. But man, it's a lot of pressure that they've put onto both Puna and Goonbag.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, they've been doing a pretty good job overall getting out this pressure, and that was another big cooldown they forced out there, the Divine Shield. Unix, of course, dropping lower and lower on mana is something we talked about. And I mean, they really need to come up with something here. You can see Poon, once again, just pulling back and really trying to make it hard for Vinx. He's forcing Vinx to push in, which means they have the opportunity to get crowd control. We see the in-cap there, but unfortunately denied follow-up. Unix now trying to push in, get that next crowd control. In-cap comes out, but Hodge will be longer. He might be able to land a Repentance off this as well. Doesn't look like it either. So they're swapping the damage over onto the Warrior. Poon definitely struggling, though, just can't get anything out. And I mean, this is the final game of the series, potentially. If Poon does die here, then Unix, Poon, and Prime
this is a touch of death go
from the first cup. They're trying to get damage over with that touch of death. Maybe it's going to be enough, but the Trinket Astral Shift is still available.
Yeah, no, they don't get anything done with the touch of death, but they do get a bolt onto Boy Franklin. I mean, they are chunking him. They force him to use that parry. They did scare him with that, but I don't know. This is looking really rough for them. Puna is caught in that full Storm Bolt. They have a sack left right now, and they have the unending resolve being used here. So that is just going to keep him in the game. Looks like he's going to try to get off maybe 1 bolt, but he can't. There's a fear. He has to use the bop out of the fear. And I mean, I don't know if he could keep him alive at this point. It's just so scary for Puna at this point. Unix is just trying to hold on for dear life.
I mean, credit to Unix. After dropping so much mana at the start of the game, he's done a really good job of sustaining his mana pool. Like, the fact that he still has a decent 30% chunk is very, very impressive, actually, depending on the damage that's coming out of Voon and Boy Franklin, of course. But at the end of the day, he's used a lot of his defensive cooldowns as consequence of that. That's how he's able to be so efficient. And now he doesn't have those. One more wind shear or anything like that, honestly, could just be the game. We see Bloodlust now popped, Goon trying to get offensive. We see Ring of Peace as well, trying to knock Poon away from his DPS. But once again, he's plodding away, trying to make it harder. Good Succubus there on the Warrior defensively, just to try, maybe even try and bait out the trinkets so he can get an opportunity later. A good double stun here. Could potentially be a bit of trouble, but Primes just doesn't have the follow-up.
Oh, they might kill Vinx in this, though.
Over to Vinx. Oh, they got the life cocoon there. So that's actually pretty good. They forced that. They now have no trinkets. If they can set up one more stun lock onto Goon, they could potentially win it. But Poon dropping low, Goon and Poon.
He's getting the shear.
It's going to be the execute. Maybe the wind shear. Oh, no.
He had the sack.
They had the sack. They had the trinket.
The shear was so unfortunate for them. Man,
Goon takes down.
Unix was trying to like bait them away too, because what he was doing, he was sitting behind the box, frequently going for drinks, and that was forcing the Warrior to stay heroically back and giving up some of that mobility and giving it off a little bit extra time on Poon. Because I mean, when you think about it, the turbo doesn't have that much consistent pressure onto the Warlock. It's really they kind of wait for their burst setups, and their burst setups are just shorter. That's really the main thing. They have sharpened blade every 30 seconds. It gets scarier and scarier the longer the game goes on.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's one of the big advantages of having that warrior, right? The heavy against dampening, mortal strike, and then even sharpened blade, as you say, like those healing reductions stacked with the modifier of just dampening itself, and that healing reduction from there definitely gives warrior a huge advantage, plus just D-stance being something that will never be affected by dampening. But of course, we are now heading to our grand finals. That was a 3-0 victory for Unhandsome men. They will be advancing to have that match against Gronks, who, I mean, some people were wondering why they weren't the #1 seed. Maybe they didn't come in the strongest in terms of current rating when the signups closed, but they definitely came in as one of the strongest to this tournament.